I'm gonna love you.
Welcome back, everyone, to Agree to Disagree. Here with Durango today, and we're really excited to talk about this next topic. We're going to talk a little bit about The Last Jedi.
We saw it pretty much when it came out, and we've been talking about it nonstop. And we went in, we're both ready to love this movie, and we came out with very different ideas about what just happened. And we thought we'd share our ideas with you guys and see what you guys think as well.
Yeah, this was actually the ongoing debate that got us started with this channel. We're going to agree on a couple things and disagree on a lot of things today. So take a stance and let us know what you think.
Derek, let's start off with some things that we both think the movie did well.
I thought there was some great humor.
I was laughing a lot. I enjoyed it.
I thought it was the witty, clever type, and it fit well in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was done really well in this movie were the visuals. There were some visual moments that were just really great to look at.
Parts that were definitely eye candy for the fans. What do you think about the fight scene between Rey and Kylo Ren?
I actually thought that was one of the most enjoyable fights to watch out of Star Wars.
Two force-sensitive, powerful, up-and-coming Jedi and villain work together and fight.
Yeah,
cool.
I don't think we've seen anything quite like that before,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons it stood out and was so fun to watch. Even with some of these things that I agree that I liked, there are some problems. And we'll get into this more.
I think we could probably both agree that Admiral Holdo was a terrible character.
I agree, yeah. Not a great character. Did not like her very much at all.
She was being unnecessarily secretive about her plans.
Mm-hmm.
We barely meet her, and then she has an amazing heroic death that I didn't feel like she deserved.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that death would have been, if Leia had been given that death or Admiral Akbar had been given that death, it would have suited that character much better.
Well, let's jump in here. Let's stay away from characters. Let's talk for a minute about plot points. Let's start with the bombs in space. I know this is something you feel strongly about.
Yeah, so I think it was a terrible idea to have bombers in space dropping bombs on the Dreadnought.
There are several things that could work. There's electromagnetism.
Uh-huh.
That's one of the biggest things. They're both both their ships are made of metal. Magnetism is one of the best way to attract things in space.
Right. So I agree, but the ship that you're using to drop the bombs is also made of metal. So if it just gets attracted to the nearest metal object, then it would hit your own ship.
Just because you don't understand the science behind the bomb, it doesn't mean they can't work.
Well, and here's the other thing though, is I know that they've published extra sources explaining that the bombs were electromagnetic and that's how they worked. The thing is, though, is the movie is a story medium. It's meant to tell a story and make sense. So if the movie can't explain itself, then the story's done poorly.
But here's the thing. If you have to explain and expound on every tiny little detail, that's not interesting to me.
Right. And I agree. So you shouldn't have to explain every detail, but let's look at this. This is the only victory that the rebels win in this entire movie. So this isn't a little detail. So you ought to explain the only victory the rebels get in the movie.
Well, here's the thing again, though. Just a tiny little detail of how the science behind the bombs work doesn't necessarily take away from their victory.
Kind of does, because the only victory they have in the whole movie, the audience is questioning, what? How did that work? And there could have been so many things done so easily to give them that victory. They could have just switched out really easy. Instead of going to bombers, they could have gone to torpedoers or something like that. Okay. And you could have had the same victory, but with none of the questions.
Let's talk for a minute about the heroes in this show.
The creators of this new Star Wars trilogy were worried that their new heroes wouldn't stand up to the old heroes. And so when you have that problem, we have these new heroes that we want people to like just as much. How do we get them to like them? And the idea they came up with, I feel, is, well, let's take the old heroes down a notch. And I feel like the old heroes were, and it's fine to make the old heroes human and flawed, but they made them so flawed that they're just not as fun to watch anymore. And I feel like a lot of people came to see those old heroes be heroic in some ways, and they don't seem to be heroic in any ways anymore.
Let's hear some examples.
Well, we have Han, who in The Force Awakens, right, it's stated that he's not even good at smuggling anymore. There's no one left for him to swindle, so he's not even good at what he was good at anymore. He's a divorced husband, a loser dad, and then gets killed by his whiny brat son. And then we have Luke, who leaves just because he's scared. The other big thing that the heroes have taken away from them is at the end of the Return of the Jedi, they have this big victory, the rebels do, and you feel like the Empire's been defeated in some way, but then you come back to The Force Awakens, and they're just as strong, if not stronger, than they were before, which undermines the victory that all the last heroes had.
About Han, I do agree that his death was a little bit anticlimactic in The Force Awakens. Part of that, though, is due to the fact that Harrison Ford didn't actually want to be in Star Wars anymore.
Yeah.
as far as Luke fleeing onto the island, you're right. It is a very natural thing for humans to do when they're scared is to run. They want to get away as fast as they can. And two, Jedi naturally go to almost unfindable places in the galaxy to hide themselves and to wait, right? One of the things, though, with Luke is he finds out, the first time he finds out that there's a war between the Resistance and the First Order is from Rey, right? So he's living on this island for, probably more than 30 years with this mindset of this is where he's going to come to die so that he doesn't have to be involved anymore with the Jedi. And then all of a sudden, after 30 years, he has this girl come and tell him they're at war. He's not going to change his opinion immediately. And I feel like this movie is about that transformation of him changing his mindset, coming out of his old ways.
And this is the other thing that doesn't make as much sense to me. We see that whenever his friends are in danger, he knows it. He gets some sort of premonition, like he knew when Leia and Han were in trouble before. And it seems silly that this war could have been going on for so long, and his friends were in danger for so long, and he didn't notice that ever.
I can see that. I think it's possible that he may have known, but again, his fear and his set way of I'm staying out of this may have prevented him from doing anything.
Yeah.
Until Rey helped him realize the gravity of the situation.
Right, and again, that doesn't make sense to me very much that he would have so much fear, because we learn that the path to the dark side is fear.
It's true, and I think that's part of it. I mean, this movie kind of helps us realize that's one part of becoming a true Jedi that maybe he never quite mastered. We see all throughout the original trilogy he was scared and he was fearful all the time. For example, when he found out Vader was his dad, I mean, he was freaking out. When he saw Yoda, when he was on Dagobah with Yoda, he mentioned to Yoda he was scared several times. Luke's always been a fearful character. I think that's been part of his personality.
Yeah.
We might just need to agree to disagree on this.
Overall, that's just my biggest complaint is I feel like the way they tried to raise up these new heroes was by destroying a lot of the things that the old heroes did. And I don't think it's necessary. I think you can have new heroes that are just as lovable without destroying the old ones. One of the things I did not like about the movie as much is it felt like the whole movie was a chase scene to me.
Yeah. So?
We have the only rebel victory at the beginning, and then the rest of the movie the rebels are running.
Okay.
/ flying.
So here's the thing.
/ escape podding. Yeah. / running through Canto Bight.
So
even the side plot was a chase scene.
But here's the thing: is you realize the Resistance they don't have very many people left, especially after that fight on Starkiller Base. He had a huge amount of their forces wiped out. Mm-hmm. There's hardly any of them left, and at the very beginning of Last Jedi, they're evacuating. Towards the end of the movie, when they send out a signal, no one comes, and they realize, oh no, we're the last people left.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's all about the Resistance trying to survive, trying to just hang on at least a few so they can rebuild the rebellion. And so you've got to make it seem desperate. They were desperate through the whole movie.
You're right, and it was desperate throughout the whole movie, but you could make a desperate situation without having them run in a straight line almost the entire movie. And here's the other thing that doesn't make sense about that chase scene is they learned pretty quickly that there was just one ship tracking them. So if Leia was smart, she would have just said, all right, we have 5 ships. Let's have each of our ships go in a completely different direction. They only have one ship tracking us. They won't be able to track all 5 ships. And she would have saved 4 out of the 5 ships.
Okay.
So why didn't that happen?
Well, that just seems a little bit... Okay,
smart?
So, no, it seems a little unrealistic.
What are you talking about? That's completely realistic. You say, all right, guys, on the count of 3, we're going to scatter. They only are tracking one of us, so they won't be able to get all of us.
Here's the thing. They didn't have a ton of ships. They had maybe 3. They had
5.
I don't think there were 5. I think there were 3.
They had like 3 medical cruisers.
No.
They had the main ship. So let's say there's 4. But even then,
okay.
Let's say there's 4. Instead of all running in separate directions, they just got all
Okay, let's say
up.
there's 4. So the cruiser is about 15 times the size of the medical ship, most of which they were taking the space up of. Mm-hmm. That's the ship that from the planet where they took off, that's where they loaded everyone into is the cruiser. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, if you leave and then you jump into hyperspace thinking you're okay and they're like, crap, they tracked us, everyone's now in the cruiser and there's a few medical ships, how realistically are you going to... I mean, if they split up, the 3 medical ships go it's different ways and the cruiser goes one way, obviously the First Order is going to go after the cruiser because it's the big one. That's what holds everyone. Mm-hmm. So what's the point then?
Well, here's the thing, though, is if you're just focused on saving lives, you can disperse the people in the cruiser to the other ships, and let's say they go for the big ship, fine, they get that ship, but then all the lives are safe.
At what point are they supposed to transfer all the people from the cruiser to the medical ships
But
mid-flight?
they were transferring people from the medical ships to the cruiser the whole time.
Well, they weren't.
They were. That's why every time that they knew a medical cruiser was about to die, they transferred everyone to the cruise ship. So they were able to transfer people mid-flight, no problem. That wasn't the problem.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
So, and if they were just focused on saving lives, then they could have spread out the people equally among all the ships and dispersed that way.
Okay,
But instead,
so here's-
they lost all their ships and tons of their people because they did nothing except go in a straight line.
So here's one issue. The medical ships were already low on fuel when they left, and that's what made them die.
Right, but
so,
they did have enough fuel to go into hyperspace one more time. They stated.
yeah.
Yeah, so they could have done that one jump in all different directions, and then maybe one ship would have gotten sacrificed, but the other 4, 3, whatever would have survived.
And there's also nothing that ever says the First Order can only track one ship at a time through hyperspace.
Well, but see, Finn and Rose, who aren't even the smartest people aboard, mind you. One's a janitor and one's some lady just tasering people in the back kind of thing. Figured out really quickly.
Wait, what do you mean janitor?
Finn's a janitor. That was his job on the First
Order.
Order.
He was a stormtrooper.
He was a stormtrooper janitor.
Okay.
Finn is the epitome of dime a dozen.
Oh my.
Anyway, so these guys are the ones that figured out that the First Order was only tracking through their main ship. So only one ship was tracking. That's why their plan that they came up with, their side plan, was to go disable one tracker, which they could do.
Well, yeah, the Snoke's ship was the one tracking through
Right.
hyperspace.
Yeah, so Snoke's ship is only tracking, so only one ship is tracking. How is that one ship going to track 5 different ships if they all go in
Why
different
not?
directions? Because they're all in different directions.
You can still track all 5.
Why?
Why not?
Because they're in different directions. They're separate entities.
They can track more than one entity at a time.
How do we know that?
How do we know they can't?
Common sense.
No, there's no common sense in the
There
Star Wars
is.
universe.
Oh my god. Well,
It's
there
what-
ought to be. Maybe that's the problem with this new
No,
trilogy.
there's no. How can you say there's common sense in another universe? It's like, wait, it's their world. They define common sense.
Oh my goodness.
You can't just say it's common sense for a TIE fighter to do a spiral a TIE fighter. The TIE fighter should have done this as their evasive maneuver. It's like, well, how do you know? Did you go through TIE fighter school?
But we're not talking about a TIE fighter. We're talking
I know.
about
I'm just giving that as an
tracking system.
example of how common sense is relative, especially when we're talking about a whole other freaking galaxy here a long, long time ago.
Let's say you're right and they could track all 5 ships. It doesn't explain well enough. We don't know if they could track all 5
Well, maybe
ships.
they didn't
We
want to
don't
make
know.
it. Maybe they didn't want to make a 4-hour movie and explain every single little detail.
Right. Well, if the plot as the way it is makes no sense and you have to explain more, maybe you ought to change the plot.
Okay, well, I'm sure you could have done better, and you would have made way more money.
Well, here's the thing. People always go to this argument. Well, Star Wars made tons of money, so it has to be good. People didn't know how good it was until they went and saw it. It has the Star Wars name brand. But now there's so many people who are upset about it. I'm sure the next movie's not going to make as much money, and I'm sure this movie's not going to make as much money post-theater because not as many people will buy it.
I'll hold you to that prediction, and we'll see what happens.
All right. And here's the other problem with the chase scene. We have the First Order chasing the rebels, right?
Yeah?
Why didn't the First Order just have more people come around the other side and box them in?
Well, they already explained that. The reason they couldn't do that is because the cruiser was slightly faster.
Right, out of light speed. But why didn't they have some ships go to light speed, flank it from the
Okay,
other side, and then close in?
Here's the thing: when you can't just travel like a distance of 1 mile in light speed. If you go to light speed even for half a second, you're gonna travel hundreds of thousands of miles. You can't
Right.
just light speed a short distance like
Right,
that. It
right,
doesn't
right.
work that way.
So it takes planning, but you could still do it.
Well, yeah, maybe after the cruiser travels for 8 days, they might show up at the light speed thing.
Well, we don't know how long it would have taken them, and we don't know if the First Order has any more ships. For all we know, they could have called in more people to come flank them from somewhere else. It wouldn't have to be necessarily those same ships that are chasing it at the moment.
To be totally honest with you, I'm pretty convinced that they had the majority of their force following the resistance.
But again, we don't know that.
Yeah, so I guess there's just too much we don't know for your argument to be valid.
They don't explain why none of these other actions are taken. It would have taken one line to say, why don't we have ships flank them? Oh, we can't because of... And that thing would have been covered.
Here's the thing is, you can look at any story and say, they could have done this or this or this or this. You can do that with any story.
No, because we're assuming that these people are rational, right? Rational people will always make the best decision for themselves and or their group. And so with just a couple minutes of thinking, we can say, well, perhaps this decision was better. And we don't know why none of these other decisions were not even contemplated.
Well, I think there's common sense.
Is there common sense, Darren?
Oh my god.
You just said in Star Wars there is no common sense.
I said common sense is relative. Come to a stalemate then. Agree to disagree.
The Canto Bight scene is also the casino scene. And I thought it was terrible.
Yeah, you and a lot of other people feel that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that feel opposite, but explain why.
For me personally, I thought too much time was devoted to this scene. Put the amount of time that was spent there aside for the moment. I think it was bad for a couple reasons. One, it was just another series of chase scenes. One of the other reasons I didn't like it is basically the whole side trip was pointless. Had Admiral Holdo been upfront and honest with her plan, the whole thing would have worked out well, and they wouldn't have come up with a side plan to go there, and a lot more of the people would have lived. So had she just been a good leader, this whole thing would have been pointless.
But that just kind of goes back to the fact that she was not a great character.
Right. So, but still, but as an audience member, you still feel like, oh, this whole thing's kind of pointless because had these people just been rational or smart or whatever, this whole thing wouldn't have not even
Sometimes that's
happened.
real life, though. Sometimes stuff happens.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes people are just sensical, but I guess not in Star Wars. This is the most terrible line in the whole movie, is after they trash the casino with the animals, and Finn says, well, it was worth it, meaning it was worth sacrificing the rebellion, the spark that would ignite the fire, the revolution, to save these animals. And then Rose takes off the saddle at the last one and says, now it's worth it.
Okay, I'll agree that the now it's worth it was lame.
Awful line.
I'll agree with you.
Terrible line.
Now let me tell you why I liked Candlebite.
Okay, why did you like it?
Okay, so for one, with Candlebite, I like seeing new parts of the Star Wars universe.
See, that's what I liked as well. I just wish it had been more relevant to the story.
I really liked seeing, you never see the rich, gluttonous, corrupt part of the galaxy. All through the original trilogy and up until now, you only see like the poor parts. You see Tatooine. Mm-hmm. You see Rey on Jakku. You see all these poor or just, these grungy towns where you just see the rebellion or other people suffering while the Empire is just, being very oppressive over them. You don't ever see these corrupt people that are kind of above all that. I mean, I liked how at the end it also showed the little boy that had the ring that they gave to there. Mm-hmm. And it kind of helped them. It's kind of like igniting the spark in them. And these little Force-sensitive kids that are, they're going to grow up to be Jedi.
Right.
And who knows, maybe the reason they're going to grow up to be Jedi and get trained and fight against the First Order is because of Rose and Finn's journey there. They sparked that in them. There's one more thing that I really liked about Candlebite is I feel like as far as plot goes, it was a turning point for Finn.
Character development and growth shouldn't come by sacrificing the plot.
Because we can agree to disagree here then with Candlebite.
Well, because the characters are for the plot, not the plot for the characters.
Well, I guess that's a relative point of view, though. Others might not see it that way.
If you have lots of characters but no story, what's the point of having characters?
Well, I think this is a good stopping place for part 1.
Yeah, we have tons more to talk about. We're just barely getting started.
Yeah, let us know what you think. I'm sure some of you will agree with me, some will agree with Durango, but we want to hear all your opinions, even if they're different. So, thanks, guys. We'll see you back in part 2.